Welcome. As you all know, I'm Kelley Keehn. I'm your host for today for the first Women's Roundtable discussion. So I'm really excited to have all of you. Thank you for being with me.
And we're excited to be here.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you. It's great.
Thank you.
So it's estimated that women at some point will oversee 90% of the wealth, yet the financial services industry still really focuses and caters to men. So by design, choice, or circumstance, women have some really critical decisions to make when it comes to their financial life. If it's, surviving a spouse, divorce, a business, maybe a sale of it. And if she doesn't have a solid financial footing, she could be at risk to a lot of different vulnerabilities. So that's why I'm so thrilled to have a very diverse group of women at this table today to teach us and teach the women watching this what are the top things that they need to know when they're coming into a lot of money. So I'm so excited to hear from all of you. And I'd like to introduce you first. I have here Rose Reisman, who is author and caterer of Rose Reisman Catering. Robyn Graham, Managing Director, Wealth Manager, and Associate Portfolio Manager with ETF Capital Management. Joanne Stewart, a partner at Lerners. And Cynthia Kett, Principal and Advice-Only Financial Planning Firm, Stewart and Kett. And Jane Rooney, Financial Literacy Leader of Canada with the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. And Mary Aitken, founder and managing director of the Verity, which we happen to be. Thank you for having us here today.
Delighted to have everyone here.
And I'd of course like to thank our sponsor, ETF Capital Management, and the founders, Larry Berman and Jared Rabinowitz, for making this possible, so we can really get this message out for women. So let's start it off. What do you feel, open it up to the table, are the top barriers? As we go into 2016, still discussing the differences between men and women, and what are the barriers that women face financially and why?
One of the barriers I would see as Canada's financial literacy leader is the lack of financial literacy. Financial literacy means having knowledge, skills, confidence to ask the right questions so that you make the right decision around a financial product and service. So I think that one of the barriers is lack of financial literacy. The great thing is lots of information exists out there.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'd just like to add, though, that there is a lot of information out there, but a lot of my clients, female clients, have said to me, it's overwhelming and it's often conflicting, and you don't know whether it's biased information, and they feel sometimes intimidated by advisors that they speak to.
Mary, as a former investment banker who's now in a totally different field, hearing from a lot of women what's on their hearts and minds, what are your thoughts that are still barriers?
Well, I think for women, what I see generally here is very frequently women are in transition, and they're faced with different questions about financial planning, and in many cases they don't want to be passive about their money because they, in many cases, are entrepreneurs, and in which case they want to manage their own money. But if they are just starting out and managing small amounts of money going forward, I think they are intimidated, and I think that financial literacy should start maybe earlier in the school years.
Mm-hmm. Rose, what are your thoughts?
Even asking today, I ask even the group, why are we at this stage today when so many women are professionals? Why are we still today in 2016 talking about it? I'd like to just find out what your opinions are being in the financial world.
Robyn, do you want to maybe address that?
Well, to address the first question, I think the biggest issue is trust. Kelley, you asked us to share some anecdotes. I was actually at the hospital this morning with my 85-year-old mom who's having a knee replacement today. And I got talking to all the nurses because I wanted to bring you fresh research on this topic. And I asked them these questions, and they were telling me that they believe there's almost a conspiracy to keep the information away from them because there's so much power in large financial institutions, they use the B word, and they want to keep that information to themselves because it's so lucrative. And I actually hadn't heard that perspective before, but it's we're making so much money on this, we don't want to share the information with you. It's not for you, it's for us.
Right. And Joanne, you're dealing with women in transition. What are you finding?
Well, to address what Rose said, I think a lot of women, and for people generally, money is a really emotional topic. And there's more to money than just the money.
And within relationships and outside the relationships, there's a balance of power that flows with the money. So he or she who makes more may have more power. But sometimes if you're the woman, given the way roles have been over the last, I don't know how many years, and you're the one making more money, the balance of power can't be exercised because the gentleman who you may be with doesn't appreciate you exercising that power. So there are all kinds of struggles around it. And I think it's hard for women still to come forward, whether they're in a relationship, entering a relationship, or separating, to not stick their necks out, but to really deal with the things, because it's hard and it causes a lot of ripples within relationships, and a lot of women just say nothing. And also, given the way that money is spent, I think within families, at least my experience, women tend to pay for kids, groceries, all of those things, because that's what they're dealing with day to day. They go buy the clothes and they do all those things, and the men will buy the capital assets. They'll do the investing by and large, because they take the time to do those things, whereas women can't.
Yeah.
They cannot. They do the other stuff.
And are we seeing more financial analysts in terms of women being advisors, I mean? Are we seeing more women enter it?
Yeah, I think we
I
are.
think we are.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I think
absolutely
so.
true. I mean, there was a time when when I wrote my level 1 CFA exam, that there was a lineup for the men's room because there were only maybe 5% of the room was women. But that's very different today. There are a lot more bathrooms for women at the exam today because there are a lot more women there.
So we're saying it might take another generation until
Yeah.
that's really incorporated into our children's lives even.
I think so.
Until it
might-
won't be a
it may
topic
well.
of discussion in 25 years.
Right. And then with the fact that women on average live 16 years longer than men, this is a conversation that we have to have, right? We have to have. So what's the table's thoughts on that? On, planning for that longevity that is unique to women?
I think at the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, we're a federal government agency, so the information we provide is unbiased. People can come to our website or call our call center and get a little bit more information. But I think that one of the key issues for women is to get more confident, gain a little bit of trust, and know what questions to ask of a financial professional, and then ask the financial professional for help. So there's information on our website at pays2know.gc.ca, and there's information around at the death of a loved one. So as women age, and they might not have been the person making all the financial decisions, at least there's information in an unbiased way and format, easy, plain language, to help guide them. So it's a life event called Living in Retirement, and then there's a section about the death of a spouse or a loved one.
Yeah.
I think women have to realize that it's not only in their best interest, but in the best interest of their family, to know something about money. And so become comfortable by at least being at the table when those discussions are happening, and persist in asking questions. Don't be intimidated. Just, if you don't understand, just keep at it until you get an answer that makes sense to you. And don't be afraid to shy away from that.
And just because men have been the ones that traditionally have been managing the money, that doesn't mean that has to be the status quo moving forward. What does the table find? Is that still the status quo? And do you have any stories of actually the reversal, which I have a lot of examples in my life, where the woman now is the breadwinner, and we're seeing that those numbers significantly increase? Anyone have any stories about that?
I
I've
think
read-
there's
yes.
more and more house husbands.
Yes, I do too.
A few, yes.
Hey, I lost
There are
it.
more and more house husbands now who are proud house husbands, where it used to be embarrassing to say, well, I'm just between jobs looking after the children for a bit.
Right.
But now actually men are saying, I'm a house husband. My wife is, and proudly saying, is a partner of Lerners or some other firm. So I think that we're seeing things change, but it's going to take a long time. And I think in terms of our financial literacy, if we don't build programs for young girls in the schools, how are they going to know? So certainly my generation, we were never given a lot of financial information, and unless we studied it in further development in our careers. So I think that it's like all things, it's moving in the right direction, but it's taking time.
I mean, some of the large companies still frown upon the men taking time.
Right.
And I know that with my son-in-law, who works for a large company in the city, and my daughter now is telling him, I want you on the next child to take off half off the maternity, and he's, he's trying to take, and it's not that he doesn't want to, he's afraid it will be frowned upon.
And
And what
he's
do you
probably
do?
right.
He's
He's
probably
probably
right.
right. He's probably right.
I want to pick up on the point that Rose and now you, Mary, have said about getting to kids at a younger age. So we're really fortunate in Canada that financial literacy is starting to be taught in the school system. So kids are starting to learn, but you're right, it's going to take a long time to make a change, but at least there's
What are they
methods.
teaching now and when? Tell
So
me, I
in
don't know.
Ontario, for example, in grade 4 to grade 12, financial literacy is a required component of the curriculum. Now, it's a cross-curricular approach, so each course that you take, you're supposed to learn a little bit more about money.
Right.
English, history, math, business. So there's really good information coming, grade 4 to grade 12. And in other provinces, they've taken a different approach. Grade 10 seems to be a real key
That's great.
age because kids are maybe starting their first job, maybe having cell phone contracts. So a 15-year-old is a really good age to start teaching people about money. But it'll take a while.
Well, thank goodness it's overdue. I've been in the investment management business for 30 years, but I didn't know anything about it when I graduated from university. I'd never been really introduced to it. There was no such thing as a financial course at my high school. So,
And that's not just for women. I think that's
No,
an
that's
issue
everybody.
in Canada
Exactly.
and financial literacy that we really need to address for our youth. So just changing sides a little bit. So maybe to Joanne and Robyn and Cynthia, when women know or have some anticipation of coming into a lot of money from a divorce, from the sale of either her business or her spouse's business, are they planning for this in advance? Are they thinking maybe an inheritance, or are they just going to wing it when it happens?
Inheritances are a big thing now. And what we see a lot of, if a woman's going to inherit a lot of money and she has any kind of support system in an advice sense, that woman typically will go see a lawyer and say, what am I going to do?
Right.
How can I protect this? Not that the marriage is going to end, but just what should I do if I want to be a little bit cautious? What if I want to leave it to my kids? What if my husband leaves? I don't want him to get a chunk of it. And so that woman will hear what a lawyer has to say. We 9 times out of 10, if there's a lot of money, recommend that the person see an accountant as well, so there can be some tax planning, maybe a tax lawyer. And then a big question we have, or people say to me, who will I go to? Who will help me invest? And when you're a lawyer, when things go south, people like to sue us they like to sue all of us here at the table, but so we're really cautious about that too, because what do we say? If we refer to you and then it goes south, suddenly it becomes my problem. So that's a whole problem too, and I don't know how, with the information the way it is, how do you deal with that? Because people don't know. When you Google somebody, what does it mean? Does it mean they're fabulous?
Right.
Yeah.
Or does it mean Google put them at the top of the list?
Right, and how do you, and to use a male analogy, but how do you protect yourself from the Bernie Madoffs and the Earl Joneses?
Right.
And right now, you may or may not be aware that according to the Financial Planning Standards Council, anyone in Canada can in fact call themselves a financial planner.
Right.
This raises hairs on the back of my spine to say that,
Really?
yes, how, except in
I didn't-
Quebec, excuse me.
Okay.
Right, so we have a long way to go with education, with regulatory oversight, with educating Canadians to how to even know what questions to ask. And then, Robyn, did you want to comment a little bit and maybe come to you, Cynthia, on?
well, I think women are planning ahead when they have knowledge of the life event that's going to happen to them. Certainly, when we're meeting with investors, more and more often the couples are coming in together. The woman doesn't always say as much as the man, but she's listening, and that she's an active participant in that discussion and in that decision. And they will talk about things that their age differences, for example, the fact that they need a financial plan, and he wants to look after her when he's gone. And those types of things do come up in the investment discussion when we're structuring the portfolio for them today.
Cynthia?
I think some of the events you can't anticipate. Something happens right out of the blue and you just don't know. So, for instance, for some reason, I have a lot of young widows, and they're taking care of children. Now, they never expected that, but what happens is when these events happen, they actually say, I need help. I know my limitations, and I'm going to go out and seek help. And while the financial planning industry isn't regulated across Canada, I think it does help to know that certain people are deciding themselves, advisors, to become CFPs or certified financial planners or registered financial planners in Canada. And I think that's a good place to start for people who are looking for a good financial advisor, because at least you know that, pardon me, they've gone through some rigor, they've done training, they've got experience requirements. Start there. So, and I always say, ask people that you trust, you know, if they're dealing with any advisors, get some suggestions from them, but always interview, say, 2 or 3 advisors and see which one you feel most comfortable with and who you think would, you know, look out for your best interests and give you good advice.
And maybe go to an unbiased resource such as the government. Jane, what does your organization have, your office have?
So there are a couple of things that we have. We have life events. So there's information around investing as you're planning for your retirement or as you're living in retirement. So different transitions as we're talking about. We have information on that. We also have a financial literacy program for adults called Your Financial Toolkit. It's got a great module about investing. It includes questions to ask, and exactly to your point, how to shop around, if you will, for a financial planner or a financial advisor, a financial professional. And there are websites that have listings of people who've had complaints against them. So search to find out if someone you're interviewing has had a complaint against them. Find out if they are a certified financial planner. So the Financial Planning Standards Council has a list. IROC, the Investment Industry Regulatory Organization of Canada, has a list, and that's where the complaints would be housed. Your Canadian Securities Administrators, so securities commissions across Canada, those are really good, unbiased sources of information to help you shop around. Use the questions that you'll find on FCAC's website and find someone that you can trust.
And those are great resources, thanks. And at the
Yeah,
end of this, we will have
Yeah,
all of
that's
this listed
fabulous.
on the website as well. Now, from the 2 ladies that are joining us that aren't necessarily in the industry in any way, shape, or form, or were, how would you go about, what method would you go about of finding somebody that you trust?
Well, you know, I always laugh because when I started my own company of catering, and I must say, I went back to school, I got an MBA, but I never understood financial accounting. And I think people can relate to it just the same way I understand food and the importance of good health. People don't always click into it. But my husband said to me, you can't be good at everything.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, you'll be the brand, you'll be the marketing, you'll do this. You'll pick someone very good to help you financially. And that's actually what I've done, because it was not my expertise, and we all have our expertise. So I know when you say, you know, you've got to ask, you've got to do, if it's not who you are, it's just like I can scream at people and say, why aren't you exercising every day? Why aren't you eating healthier? I can yell it at the top of my lungs, it's not who they are. So I always I'm careful about that, because it's from my head, it's like it's so easy to eat well and exercise every day, and I don't understand it. So I think we have to allow people to say it's just not what they do, but look for someone who is good.
Yeah, and your weaknesses.
So fortunately, my husband is a financial person, and he had a large company under him, so I always knew that if something happened to him, there were good people I could always go to. So it was a bit of a, you know, I could lean on that, and maybe that's not the normal situation, but for my situation it
I think
was.
that's sage advice. Mary, what would you add to that of how you would find as somebody who, you know?
Well, interesting enough, here at the club, it's women are in all stages of their life, and in terms of their the financial side of their life, they're going. You talk about going to seek advice from advisors and people that you trust to find an advisor. That happens here every day, and it's not just finding an advisor, but it's advice. Because sometimes people have come into a lot of money and do I just invest it, or actually I've always wanted to start this business. So then if you have access to a network, and of course I'm all about networks here at Verity, then you have the opportunity to run ideas by and find constructive advice from people, and it may be to invest with a particular institution, with a person, or a whole different approach to life in terms of, well, should you be investing, or should you follow that passion that you always wanted to do and buy that sailboat, travel around the world, or whatever it is. Yeah. So I think a network is wildly important for women.
Mm-hmm. And in shopping around, the numbers are estimated around 70 to 75%. When a woman is with her spouse, when that spouse passes away, she leaves to another financial advisor, planner, what have you. Why wait? Why is she leaving, first of all, and why wait? I'll open that up to the table.
Because usually, I think if the husband did most of the talking or most of the communication, then the relationship would really be with him. And it could well be that when you were saying that the women sit there and they're listening but not talking, they might agree or disagree and just keep it to themselves because in the overall it's not worth it. So if they have an opportunity to start fresh and have the ear of the person they're speaking with, I think most would. And then they could start new patterns too, new trends, and do what they want to do instead of being stuck with the old.
Right.
Even though the old might have been fine.
Right, right. Cynthia, do you?
And I think that's a lesson to be learned by a lot of financial advisors. If you want to retain the business, then you'd better engage both parties.
Yeah.
And make sure that you're hearing both sides and emphasizing, well, what do you think, or what's important to you, or what are your concerns? They don't have to lose the business, but if they start thinking about that now, the Canadian public will be better served, but also they might retain the client.
Yeah.
Well, I think it also goes to sort of the intimidation factor. If women don't know a lot about money, they don't want to speak up and look stupid. And I think when they're left to make the decisions, they are going to go somewhere else because they want someone to understand their dreams.
Right.
And money may not be as important to women as to men. So men have been brought up understanding and how to invest. And we women are thinking of, of the children's holidays and
Right. Can I have my home? I just,
Build onto the
it becomes
kitchen.
more basic, right, absolutely.
Actually, the men may do not a good job either. But they may be doing it, and
Right.
Right.
they may not be good at it at all, but
Right.
that's
More
just what they
studies are
do.
showing that.
So the women are kind of stuck with it, and there's not much they can do unless, well, it's true, unless they want to get in a big fight, so they just don't.
I think men and women are looking for different things when they look
Yeah.
for that
Yes,
financial
absolutely.
advisor in the first place, and you're quite right, the woman may not have been well served, but maybe didn't say anything about it. Now's an opportunity to customize it.
And then also, I know with my husband, he was definitely more risky than I would have been. I would say, no, I was saying no to everything. And not good, but his personality was more aggressive, and I probably wouldn't have made those same decisions.
Yeah.
So just switching a little bit to, another transition, which would be a major one, actually, is divorce. And I have to say, a lot of conversations in closed rooms that some men have had with me are that women always fare very well in a divorce, and that they have not. And I have not found that to be, Joanne, I will come to you first. What really fascinating reference to a book called Women Don't Ask. They reference this book called The Divorce Revolution. And the authors of this book state that it's estimated that a woman's standard of living falls by 73% on average during a divorce, while a man's rises by 42%.
Is that an American book?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't, so
Okay.
please, by all means, tell, what are your thoughts on that, Joanne? Start us off.
I think that first the legislation that deals with property in both Canada and the U.S. is statewide or province-wide. So if you're a person divorcing in New York and you happen to be a woman with lesser financial resources on your side, you're going to be fine. Texas, not so great. So you can actually state shop to get a better result. In Canada, it's the provinces are more or less the same, except for Quebec. Not entirely the same, but more or less. And given the structure of property and support laws now in our country, there's more of a balancing out. And many men now feel they're getting a really bad deal, because if the woman ends up with the kids, by and large, then the money, for support purposes at least, will follow the children. So there'll be a number of men, particularly in an urban center like Toronto, who may be commuting and working hard, live an hour outside the city, who will part with, if they're lucky, half of their income, and if they're unlucky, 60% of their income, not talking about property, when they separate or divorce.
Right.
So those men are really complaining. Women who are well represented won't complain when they have that result if there's lots of money around. If they're not well represented and they just throw in the towel before they start, then they could end up in a bad way. And if there is no money, then everybody's unhappy. So if you're trying to live in Toronto on $50,000 and raise your family and your dog,
Right.
not so great. Everybody's broke.
And you're seeing where they've actually engaged. I'm hearing stories across Canada where it's often the stories that I hear that it's a working woman and she just, for whatever reason, doesn't even want to go and talk to a lawyer. Is just walking away 100%. And not engaging at all. So what's the rest of the table finding for that?
Well, I wonder if that has to do with the family values that women have. Women don't want to drag children into a messy divorce. So why don't I just walk away? I'll somehow find a way to support the children, but I won't have to drag them through some terrible mess that will be part of their psyche going forward as parents themselves. So I think women are so much more family oriented that maybe the money isn't as important as the family.
In urban centers, I actually think that doesn't happen so often because there's an opportunity in an urban center for women to get general information about all of these things. And what a lot of people do, men and women, is come see somebody like me dealing with divorces to find out if they separate or if they divorce, what's going to happen. What's it going to look like? So we can do all of that. It's like a little planning stage. And some women will say, I'm not going to bother separating. I'll wait 5 years. Others will say, okay, I'm going to separate. The money's not worth it. I'm not going to fight with him. Men will come in 5 years in advance and wait for the market to drop. Say they have big portfolios. 2008.
They're planning in advance.
Absolutely, because sure, you want to leave when the values are down, because then if it's your money and the values go up, you keep the uptick, as I call it. So 2008, the guys were separating. Remember, was it 1997, October the 5th, when the market died?
Yeah.
Remember that day?
I do.
Remember that day? Triggered separations. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Because it was cheaper to get out.
Is that even a thought in a woman's mind?
Yeah, nowadays it is.
Yeah.
The
It
women
is now.
you're talking about who are in an urban center, I don't think this is necessarily for somebody living quietly on a $30,000 income in, I'm going to say, Thunder Bay. I'm just picking Thunder Bay. But if you're in an urban center and you're making money and you know what the rules of the game are, people talk now about these things,
Right.
then yeah, for sure, women will do it. Because women and men are starting to take on the same roles, and the roles are getting really, really blurred. So if the woman is going to be the provider, she's going to find out. Because that woman who has the nature to provide is like the guy who provided by and large. The quiet woman who wants to make cookies is not providing for the family while he
Right.
stays home.
Right.
And so the personality types become the same, I think.
Robyn, what
I've
do you
observed.
think? Yeah, thank you. What do you think about that?
Well, I think this is another great example of just how much society and culture has changed in the last generation or even half a generation, where there was a time not that long ago where a woman wouldn't even think about divorce because she couldn't survive on her own.
Right.
And today's woman is so empowered through career opportunities and legal justice and other issues that she can now consider that as an option in her life. And so are they planning for it? Yes, I think they are, if they have that freedom. And we certainly do help them. In the past, I've had other situations where a divorce has happened and the woman has come to me shell-shocked. Looking
right.
for help, doesn't trust anyone, doesn't trust men, doesn't trust the financial system, but has to go to someone and would rather deal with a female in that situation.
That's the I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, that's the other scenario.
It is, yeah.
Fortunately, I've not had to encounter anyone with that.
That's really tough.
situation
That's tough for
recently.
everybody.
So for the women who didn't see it coming, as you just
Yeah.
mentioned, do they go and get a financial plan? Do they seek it out? Do they just wait? What did those women, what's your experience of what those women are doing?
They are becoming all of a sudden really smart about money because they realize that their future depends upon it. And so when they see that this might be a possibility, they are going out and getting advice. And we work with the divorce lawyers to help clients put together the information they need and to do those what-if scenarios and say, okay, this is probably what it's going to look like. And quite honestly, it is a lot more costly to run two households than it is to run one. And still, the women do seem to have more responsibility for raising minor children and looking after them. And so women are at a bit of a disadvantage because if they need to retrain or if they have to go back to work, if they haven't been working for some time, they are at a disadvantage. So if the other spouse isn't equitable and not timely in making their spousal support or child support payments, they can experience true financial hardship. So they're getting smart. They're saying, hey, I better go out and get some help.
Yeah.
And I think that's terrific. I find that when women are put in a situation, they're not cowering, they're not hiding underneath the pillow or something. They're saying, look, this is a reality, you know, get real, let's get some help, and let's find out what this is all about.
And Jane, you were telling us about resources that we can go to the FCAC for, and I also know that there's a self-assessment that can be done because of, you know, all of the resources that are out there, and just Googling some financial terms is pretty overwhelming, as you were sharing with me as well of some of your clients, where they can actually go and do a self-assessment and be directed to the resources that the government has identified.
We have, it's a very short quiz, easy to take, and it's helping people understand where they rank or what knowledge they're lacking in areas like making ends meet. So how do you budget? Do you have a budget? How many bank accounts do you have? Have you shopped around for your bank account? So those that self-assessment quiz then is linked to a database that we've created. The database houses about 1,100 resources, but it filters the answers. So if you had trouble around budgeting, the answers will filter to the information about budgeting that exists in this database. Because to a point that was made earlier, there is a lot of information out there. The resources that are in the database have been vetted by the federal government, so they're non-commercial, they're unbiased resources that can help improve someone's knowledge around money.
Excellent, that's great. So talking about, you know, when a woman's coming into money, especially like an inheritance, maybe that wasn't expected, there's a lot of stats and research on lottery winners, for example, and that within 5 years, 44% of them have spent everything, and I've heard even higher. So I wonder, is it possible that that type of mentality might happen as well, that there's this windfall, and especially if it's the result of the death of a loved one, perhaps parents that scrimped and saved, that there might be some emotional issues there in addition to the financial aspect that needs to be addressed.
In my experience, women are pretty cautious with money, and particularly trickle-down family money. If mom and dad earned the money, then the women aren't going to blow it 9 times out of 10. At least that's my experience. They really want to keep it, and if they have kids, it's to go to the next generation. So they'll use a little bit of it, but really it's about the kids, and then the grandchildren, and somebody might have to get educated, and there's all of these things that go on. So I actually, in 30-some years, I can't think of anybody who blew the money.
And what about men? You're mentioning women.
Men blow the money.
Interesting.
They do, because they feel they're going to make more. If they make money, they think they can make more money. So to them, money is not security necessarily. It's just a commodity. And it's like your hamburger. You eat it, go get another one. And they do it. They'll have little startups. They'll invest in restaurants, goes nowhere, bars, whatever, and the money's gone because it's kind of cool. It's more fun than doing what you did. Very
But
cool.
isn't it about confidence? Coming back to the confidence factor in money.
But they lose it all. The difference
Or the
is the women still
overconfidence,
have it.
the
The women have it. And the guys
But
are
they're
saying,
confident.
oh,
Whereas women are a little intimidated and keep the nest egg, and as you were saying, Rose,
Yeah.
we're definitely more conservative, I think, where
I
money
agree
is
with that.
concerned.
Yes.
We're not, so as entrepreneurs, what I think is interesting is that there's so many entrepreneurs now that are women, and does that have to do with ability to handle risk, or does it have to do with the fact that it works in life better to be an entrepreneur? You can be at home with the children, and then and
you have to
take
balance.
I think that's what it-
balance
yeah.
everything.
You can achieve balance as an entrepreneur, whereas in a corporate situation, not so easily.
I think if a woman, say a woman inherited $500,000, and you said to her, you're going to open a bar, and you're going to put in your $500,000. No, because guys do this. They think it's cool. Have a bar, and you're going to put in $500,000, and you're going to go on the hook for another $1 million. We're going to build it out. It's going to be great. And the people are going to love it. Most women would say, no, not going to do that.
In fact,
I'll take 2 and I'll keep 3. We'll see how it goes. And I'm not signing on any notes if I have an advisor. Guys, oh yeah. I mean, they're into it. Completely different. Is that confidence, or is it, I don't know, trying to be
Did you have another word that you wanted to use
Or
there?
I did. I was struggling with the word. Overconfidence. Thank you.
I'd
That was
like to
perfect.
just say, though, that one of the biggest fears women have is outliving the money.
Yeah.
And so it really doesn't matter what the source of the money is, whether it's inheritance, a lottery win, or selling a business or whatever. They're very conscious of the fact that statistically we're going to live a long life.
Right.
And we may live a long life, but along the way we may become unwell.
Right.
and might need long-term care or something.
Right.
And so, you know, for many women, I would say probably all the women I've spoken to who are clients of mine, their biggest fear is outliving the
Yes,
money.
yes.
And so they're
Yes.
naturally thinking, okay, this has got to get me from here to there.
Yeah.
Right.
How do I plan for it?
Right.
Robyn,
That's,
did you-
that's absolutely true. I was like chatting with my mom this morning, asked her what her biggest fear about money was, and it was exactly that I'm going to outlive my money, being 85. And she was widowed when she was only 63. So, and imagine trying to live on your portfolio for 25 years. And she didn't have a lot of investment knowledge either. Now, fortunately, she had me. But, but not everyone has a family member in the business.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to add that I think one of the biggest risks women have is they are possibly too conservative.
Yeah.
Because they are interested in capital preservation and retaining that nest egg and that inheritance for their children and grandchildren. And sometimes what we see is when they get a hold of the money, they become too conservative with it. And of course, in this environment, you need balance in your life, you need balance in your portfolio as well. And so really, it's about getting some good advice and structuring that so that it can grow, because you might be around for 20 or 30 more years, and you might need to live off that portfolio. And GICs aren't going to do it for you.
Right.
So.
And then when we're looking to who to turn to, and if we get that confidence, because women, I find in the Confidence Code is a great book that really examines competence versus confidence.
Yes.
That
That's a
women
good
will
word.
often be very competent, but not necessarily step up to the table. And if they are, let's say, joining an investment club, they'll go there, but they won't necessarily speak up.
Right.
Things of that sort. And in 2009, the Boston Consulting Group came out with a global study looking at every single industry as a satisfaction rating for women. And the financial services industry earned the dubious distinction of being the #1 industry that disrespected her the most and didn't get her the most. And you know, as an author that's written a number of books for women, and I know you know, work with a lot of women as well, is there really, does there need to be an overhaul of trust in the financial industry, especially when it comes to women, as we kind of touched on a little bit earlier? Let's explore that.
I think I think a lot of women work with women, that generally. So the more women that are
Why
in
is
the
that?
industry, that's a good question.
Why
Why is that?
I think it's
Because men take different attitudes.
Because
we're
we
not the
listen
same.
better.
I don't know what it is.
Well, isn't there also the analogy that women today want to go to women doctors? I mean, it's that same thing, and there
Yeah.
weren't as many women doctors
That's right.
30 years ago. Want to go to women lawyers.
Well, it's empathy and understanding
Yeah.
the situation of the other
Yeah.
person.
Is that why they're
That's-
leaving their
you know-
primary advisor when their spouse passes
I
away
think
because
so.
they weren't
Maybe.
listening?
I think
Because
so.
the primary advisor is a guy, and they want a woman who can understand.
And they want him to
the
buy a
Give
bar
support.
when he gets
Yeah, that's right.
To say something unrelated to money, if you say to most women in their 40s, 50s, menopause, okay, well, you know, you say no more, it's okay, I know what you're talking about.
Right.
If you say to a guy, menopause, they think, oh God, here we go.
Yeah.
Very different. So if
Yeah.
you take, there's, I think, as I'm 58, nearly 59 now, so when I'm out with women I've known a while, we just look at each other and go, we don't even say anything anymore, because we know it's not even, there's just no point. So there's an understanding that we have, and it just comes from just a look, literally. So if you have that relationship with women, and you can work with women who are like that, you save a lot of bother trying to explain what you're trying to do and why you're trying to do it to somebody who may hear you very differently than another woman.
I had a great business
Does that make
idea.
sense?
Are there
Yeah,
are there
exactly.
large groups now that are just women financial advisors? Are there groups right now?
I don't know.
It's a brilliant
There
marketing.
are
I'm telling you,
groups,
if you,
yes.
but
It's-
I've never heard of them specifically. I mean, to cater to that would be incredible.
I think you see
I
across the
think so.
industry today more and more women's groups emerging,
Right.
whether it be in capital markets or financial plan or ETF
Yeah.
groups or all over the places is emerging, just because women need that networking, that club opportunity where the men would go to the men's club and they do their business
Right.
there, and that's where they'd find their broker and who are you using. Women need that same
Yeah.
opportunity to network
And I think
share.
it's there's not enough out there because we're all still talking in terms of men. We're still talking about women being intimidated by men, which makes me think that most of these groups are dominated by men.
I agree that it's about trust. And that's why I think in a club environment like Verity, you have women who are able to see each other while they're working out or having a spa service or having lunch or dinner. And that's where they form relationships and they get to know people. And then they're talking about their financial situation or their upcoming
Right.
divorce or whatever. And that's where they do the business. That's the person they want to deal with because they've got to know them. They've understood there's shared values, and that's how it works. So the guys got it right insofar as, I think, having clubs and places to go where you meet people and you kind of get to know them and do business. So that's kind of what this is in a women's world.
Yeah, I think
So-
women, the numbers for women too fall. That's a big problem, I think, that we have generally, in the sense that if you look at doctors, lawyers, engineers, bankers, financial people, demographically, the women are really strong in their 30s. And then as they get older in their 40s, most peter out for whatever reason, or start to work a little less or do other things. So the younger ones are last, but the older ones, I think a lot is, certain lawyers, very few end up being partners because they don't want to do the work, or they can't, they won't, whatever it is. And I suspect in the financial industries that it's the same. It's problematic.
We held consultations to all across Canada at FCAC when I first became financial literacy leader to better understand some of the needs, some of the challenges around financial literacy, and we split it out into different demographics, not necessarily women and men, but youth, seniors, different priority groups, Aboriginal Canadians, newcomers, people with low income. Trust came across as one of the key issues over and over again. But I think trust and confidence do align, and the definition of financial literacy is knowledge, skills, confidence. So people, there are sources of information to gain a little bit better knowledge, and as you gain knowledge, confidence rises, and then the trusted relationship can be built because you have a little bit more confidence, you're asking more questions, you're getting the product or the service that better suits your needs, and so the relationship is built, and I think it's a big problem, trust.
Here's where I have an issue as someone whose last book was on avoiding identity theft, investment scams, and and fraud. And I, for my newest book, have done some consultations with women across Canada, sitting down, trying to really get to the issues of money and emotions and beliefs. And a lot of women, not all of them, but a lot of them said it is about trust, as I would echo what you said. And some even said, I just wish that somebody would come along and tell me what to do. Should I pay down? Should I do this? Should I buy that? Should I get into a business for myself or not? Here's where I have a great fear of this blanketed trust that I think can be built by fraudsters over time. And we look at Bernie Madoff and we look at an Earl Jones, and I wonder moving forward, as women accumulate their own assets, as women come into inheritances and divorces and selling of companies and things of that sort, because trust is so important to them, are they much more vulnerable potentially than men? Because once they've gained the trust of these individuals, now they don't ask any more questions.
That could happen. I could see that happening.
Cynthia?
I suppose that is possible. I guess the thing is that we can't always just assume that gender alone is, enough of a reason to go with a particular advisor. Now, it's true, we've got about 31% of CFPs are female now in Canada. That's growing. Back a while, not that long ago, maybe 10 years ago, it was probably in the neighborhood of 20%. And so it is growing. But that being said, I'm in a firm where I'm the only woman in my firm. But the men in my firm get it, they do understand the relationship and listening and understanding what the long-term goals are and looking out for the best interests of our clients. So I think that it is possible to get good information from all different sources. Trust blindly, yes, I suppose there is some of that. But as I said, this overriding fear of running out of money is a pretty good deterrent.
Yeah. Robyn, what have you experienced with clients in the past?
Well, I am gratified to hear that there is third-party independent information available, because I want to put a package together and give that to people. That has been, I think, the biggest challenge in the industry, is wherever you go to look for advice, you're probably asking someone who has a vested interest in selling you something. And it's been very blurred and difficult to tell where the independent, unbiased financial information can be obtained. So I'm really glad to hear about your toolkit and fee-based financial planning and the Financial Planners Standards Council. These are all great sources.
I'd never heard of it either. I'd never heard of
Yeah.
That's why we're here
Get the
today,
word out.
to get these
Never
resources
heard of it.
out there.
Very good,
Exactly.
That's useful.
Yeah.
That's useful.
How do you get it? How do you get it out to people? How do you let
So
people know?
networking is one of the
Is one of the
key,
things. Yeah.
Ways that we get material out. So we work with the financial industry. Kelley is actually on a steering committee that I have. There's a national steering committee to help guide financial literacy efforts, and Kelley is one of those folks that acts as a champion. So within each of the sectors, investments, insurance, banking in general, nonprofits, they all provide information to their networks. And we do some advertising and through Google AdWords and such. So we're trying to draw people in to the federal government's website, but really it's through the networks that we've created.
And it takes time and through the referral and exactly those packages. So
Yeah.
when I started off in talking about women building their financial foundation, you need more than just, maybe a financial advisor. What else do you need? Like, what professionals does a woman need on her side, maybe to anticipate these transitions?
I'm biased.
Okay.
Definitely biased.
Thank you
but-
for letting us know. Share the bias.
But, I do think that somebody like a CFP, Professional Certified Financial Planner, is a good place to start because they draw on all those other disciplines and can help you lay out the map of what needs to be done and by whom, and can help to rally the different professionals and make sure that everybody's in the boat and we're all rowing in the same direction. And so I do think that having somebody in that quarterback type of role does make sense. And the accountants and the lawyers and the bankers and everybody else, gets pulled in and it's coordinated. It's a coordinated effort.
I couldn't agree with Cynthia more. At our firm, we believe that financial planning is absolutely essential as part of the investment management, and we focus on the investment management, but we know our clients, we can't do a good job of that unless the financial plan is in place. And we're actually in the process of building that skill set internally and bringing more people on board who have those skills. Because how can you possibly structure an investment program for someone if you don't really understand their long-term financial and life goals? So that's absolutely key, a financial planner, and then the other experts that are part of that financial plan, the tax expert, the legal expert, the estate planning part, the insurance part. You need all of these people to help you do a good job, but you do need a quarterback. I agree with that.
Any of the women who are listening to this will be saying, oh, really? I have all these people. Can you imagine? That's a full-time job, just trying to deal with it all.
Yeah.
Well, and trying to find
And
too, I mean,
to get yourself there.
and to
Yeah.
figure out
Yeah.
if you do actually step up to the plate and have that confidence to go and ask those
Right.
questions. Is it your banker? Is it when
Where
you go
where
and
do you
see your
start?
Apparently
financial
not.
advisor? Do you go to a chartered financial analyst or a portfolio
Right.
manager? Like, where do you
Where do you
go?
start?
Where do you start? How do you get those? Do we have those resources yet, or are those still being developed? Putting Jane on the spot totally.
Well, in that FCAC's website, we actually talk a little bit about in different life events, and it's easily searched. The information on our website is easily searched. But we do talk about the importance of a financial plan, setting financial goals, planning for your future, and that means retirement years. And it also means having a will, having estate planning done. It talks about tax and how important strategies are around taxes. And then insurance, because a lot of people don't think about older years, you might need additional care. Have you planned for the unfortunate event if you have a critical illness or disability? So that information is available on FCAC's website.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Now, it's estimated that a third of the global wealth out there is actually being managed by women. So that number is increasing dramatically, and that's exciting. But do you feel that women, maybe Rose, I'll ask you just anecdotally, if your peer group, do you feel that women are stepping up to the plate when they actually, as you kind of alluded to earlier, are that those dollars are within their direction, or are they deferring to others? Are they?
Are you saying when they inherit
Or when they just have it, if they've earned it, if they've inherited it, are they, stepping up to the plate or deferring to others?
I'm still seeing in my generation they're referring to others. That's
Is
what
it a
I'm saying.
spouse? Is it a child, maybe
It's
an adult child?
Sometimes a child, but even though, I have 4 children, 2 are boys, but at this point, they're still new, at this whole world. So I would tend to go either to a family member that I trust,
Right.
a friend that I trust, and I have friends in the financial world and who have been friends for, again, 30 years. So again, you're going to someone that you trust and you know is interested in yours. So that's what I would do.
Right.
That's what my peers are doing.
Yeah. What, go ahead, did you?
I was going to say, though, the difficulty with dealing with somebody who's a family member or a close friend in terms of advice is if things don't go so well, then it really does influence and affect that relationship. And so I do encourage people to consider using objective third-party advisors for that reason.
Well, I'd like to add to that insofar as, and I'm not going to mention Verity again, but if I could use the word network, the importance of a network is critical because a lot of women that I speak to find that their life's goals aren't understood by their financial planner. And the life goals have to come first, and then the financial plan built around it. Right. And they often find it the other way. Now, I haven't always asked who their financial planner is, whether it's someone that they inherited or from family, from husband, did they choose that person? But when they do choose someone, they go and they want to talk about first their financial goals. And in a network, it's possible to throw around ideas about what do you want next and how do you see the next 5 or 10 years of your life, and then to build on that. And so that goes back to the idea of the network, and from that, plugging in the trusted advisors.
I wonder what happens given that we're kind of a rural country. We're not really urban, but for the few big cities scattered across the country. If you're living in a rural environment and you're a woman or a man even, what do you do? Where do you go? How do you pick the people and where do you find them? Your website's great actually because at least it's there, it's neutral and it's informative. But then what do you do?
Well, and what
It's
other,
interesting, isn't it?
That's
It
a very
is.
good point. What other
Yeah.
barriers, other than just being, maybe isolated, what other barriers are women facing? Lack of time, as you probably hear the same for putting your health up there,
Right.
putting our money up there is often
Yeah.
the same thing. So what are women actually holding themselves back that maybe they need to in 2016 say, I'm going to, start putting that at the top of the to-do list?
It's like that January resolution, that we all say we're going to do and actually start to do the task, schedule it, and make it a priority. And it's words. It's just words. How long has the website been going now?
FCC was created in October 2001. My appointment was April 2014. So the new database that I mentioned, a database that draws on other organizations besides federal government, was created in November 2014.
So just
it's
like
new,
a year
it's
and
new,
so.
and raising awareness that exists, that there's information out there on all sorts of financial topics to help people. So it's one way of learning, but there's definitely one-on-one and talking to people, finding the right networks is so important. So finding someone you trust and going through finding a financial planner or advisor, I think. would be
Yeah,
really
and
good.
if you're in a rural area, it is
harder.
pretty limited, right?
Yeah,
You're
it's
going to
much
end up
harder.
at your local bank branch
Yeah.
or your insurance agent, and you might get a good advice
Right.
there, but you might not. It's much more difficult.
I find with the younger generation, of course, everybody's interconnected by the internet.
Yeah.
And I deal with clients from all over the place
Yeah.
on Skype and things like that.
really?
And
Yeah.
so that is one way that people in more remote areas can gain
Yeah.
access to information and advice.
Mhm.
And I mean, as I said, people, young adults are this is their world, this is easy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's helpful. And I find that we do have a lot of clients who are from rural areas, and they will come in and deal with us because, one, they don't want to deal with their neighbor because they
Right.
just
Don't
don't
want to
know.
know.
They don't want their
That's too-
business spread around. Two, they don't always know whether or not the people in their communities are up on the latest
Yeah.
strategies and information. So I think that the internet can be very empowering.
Oh,
in
absolutely.
that sense.
If for younger people, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe even your 60s, you're going to go out and get the information today that you need.
Right.
But if you're older than that, and these are still a lot of where the wealth is centered and where these life events are happening, They're not as comfortable with the internet yet.
Right.
Although I did give my mom an iPad, and she's using it, but she doesn't use it for that. And,
But that's also where the children step in,
Mhm.
right? The
Yes.
children
Yeah.
step in and help them.
And help,
Sometimes.
ideally.
And that's-
Ideally.
Sometimes with
Less
the amount of
ideally, take the
information
money.
available on the internet, whether you're rural or urban, the problem can be, I think about our gender, is it's analysis paralysis. The more information we
Oh,
have,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
it's mind-blowing,
Mhm.
which goes back to the central point of who do you go to?
That's right.
And the importance of where you go and who you go. Because left to our own devices, we can sometimes put all that information together and then freeze.
That's a very valid point.
not everything on the internet's truthful either.
That's
know.
yeah, exactly. And it's
Absolutely.
not that face, that connection,
That's
that
right,
trust.
it's not the face and the person can't say the
Right.
words.
At
it's
the
just
end of
they're
the day,
articulating it.
relationship is
Yeah.
going to trump
Mhm.
all. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
if you
agree.
have to develop a bond with someone, and you can
Yeah.
really only do that face to face with them,
Yeah.
I think. So the internet's great, and the telephone will get you a lot further,
Mhm.
but ultimately they're going to want to sit down with you, I
Right,
think,
yeah.
Yeah,
eventually.
to
If
read
it's if you're
someone.
talking about somebody's all their money,
Yeah.
they want to meet you.
Mhm.
Right?
So just in wrapping up with a couple more questions, as I said at the start, women at some point 90% of them will be managing all of the wealth. That could be at numerous stages in her life. So let's talk about commingling of assets, of getting remarried, of cohabitating, all of these things that might happen sometimes, several times in her life. What considerations, and maybe Joanne, I'll start with you, what considerations does she need to keep in mind?
If she has a significant amount of money, whatever that means different things to different people, and there are different relationships, then I think that in the back of the woman's head, or the man's head, anybody's head, has to be that if I may lose a part of it. If this ends, I may lose a part of it. So if you want to block that from happening, there are different structures you can use. You can do agreements to keep your own money. You can set up other structures that don't require agreements. They're done in other ways for tax purposes or corporate structures. There's all kinds of things to be done. And it's just a matter of doing it and being comfortable doing it, because a lot of people don't want to talk about it. And what we've seen lately, particularly, and again, because I practice in Toronto, there are a number of persons getting into older relationships who don't wish to disclose to the person they're getting
Right.
into the relationship with what they have, because they're lying. I'm trying to think of a better way to put it. They hold themselves out as being very wealthy. Say the woman's got money. The guy doesn't have money, but he pretends he has money. So when it comes to, say, doing an agreement, he doesn't want to do it because he needs to disclose what he has.
Right.
And he's not being forthright. Then he says, okay, I'll try to persuade her, no agreement. Off he goes. I sound kind of jaded, but it's what I listen to. It's a certain sector of things. And so you have to be careful for that too, because what you see is not necessarily what is. So there is, and money, I think I started saying, money means so much to people that's not about the money. It's about, I don't even know what it's about. We should have a psychologist here.
Next round table.
Next round.
Yes.
Because that's, when you talk about confidence, trust, all of those things, that's the psychology part of it, or that's now the behavioral economics.
Right.
Do you know anything
Yes,
about that?
absolutely.
It's amazing, actually.
Absolutely.
So that, I mean, if you can get down to the core of it all, the money would flow beautifully, really. I
But we're
think.
not rational
We're not
when it
there.
comes
Let me ask you, how many of you are married here? Married?
Yes.
Yeah.
Define marriage.
Living with someone for a number of years.
Yes, yeah.
And how many of you ever had a prenup? Anybody?
I had one.
You had one. When you were, first marriage or the marriage in general? Like you had one marriage? I'm not saying because we learn as we get older.
Right, right, exactly.
Just saying when you were 22, I'm just saying it, 22 or 23, were you?
No, I was 35 at the
Okay,
time.
so different. So, and how many of you have children
No,
that are
actually,
married?
when was that?
Yes.
How many of your children that are married? Anybody?
Yes.
Not
No. And did they have prenups?
One did.
Yeah. Because this is something we've advised our
And
children.
did yours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my
Did
son-in-law.
you? We have to ask you.
No,
now. Did you?
no,
Yeah, okay.
nothing.
Right.
And my husband's brothers, who had considerable wealth, didn't, and it was very, very messy. And so my husband advised my daughter that you have to do this, and his family were just so upset that you don't trust him, and it was like 4 weeks before the wedding, and it wasn't signed yet. And just saying that today, I think they're understanding, because his lawyer was saying, well, wait a minute, there were two sides coming here. And so I think today that we are advising our children to come up with a prenup. Well,
It's a real,
especially if they have assets before.
it's
right?
a curiosity, because a lot of times you deal with the parent, not the child. So the
Oh,
child's
absolutely,
35,
yeah.
and you have the father standing there saying,
Right.
if you don't do this, you'll never get a penny. But
Right.
that doesn't make for, the sadness of that,
Terrible.
one, it makes for a really bad contract,
Abs-
likely not to
absolutely.
be upheld later, but it also really wrecks the relationship. So the
Yes.
trickle down is, really, don't you want to be with that person and be married? Is this what is this about? Saving your whatever you're going to have, or is it about the relationship? And that becomes, you can see when you do what I do, when they're going to work and when they're not going to. Because a lot of people, they implode in the process
Yes.
of the talk of the
Yeah.
money because they don't want to talk about it, they can't, whatever. The ones who can never separate because they're already on side.
Yes.
Interesting.
You
And
see,
the
we
fact-
didn't
It's-
need a
it is interesting.
psychologist.
Right,
We-
exactly.
It's just great.
And you know what's
Going to her.
interesting about this conversation is it's not just the children that are getting married anymore, but now that people are living to 80 and 90, they're getting married for the second
Oh,
or
yeah.
third
Oh,
time
yeah.
at that late stage of life.
Right.
And dealing with these issues is extremely important. The children will definitely have their own ideas about those
Right.
assets and what they're entitled to, and they will probably have made
Oh,
sure
yeah.
that there's a
Yes.
will in place and there's some estate
Right.
planning that's been
Exactly.
done before that new person enters the relationship.
It just is a public, you should have this on your public service thing, whatever it is. Can I, just one thing, if I say one thing and anybody's listening to this, be really careful when you do powers of attorney when you're elderly. Because if you give the power of attorney for a personal care of property, which is outside the will, to say your child, but your spouse, who may be 30 years younger, and it could be marriage number 2 or 3, controls the money, then your children may say, I love my parent and you need to look after my parent well. The one with the money who wants the person to die says, no, you're going to be in the corner, good luck with that. So there becomes a real contest between the one running the money and the one who has the legal say about the money. Very, very difficult. So that's
Great
a
tip.
hard
Thank
conversation
you.
to have.
Power of
Thank
It's
attorney is
really
a very
difficult.
Powerful.
It's-
a
it
very
is,
powerful tool.
and women get
And
messed
a
on
lot
that.
of people don't understand it.
Yes.
Government, it's a federal,
Yes.
provincial, territorial publication called What Every Older Canadian Should Know
Yes.
About Powers of Attorney and
Yeah.
Joint Bank Accounts.
Yes.
Because
Oh,
those
that's
are very powerful
Yeah.
tools. And people often don't know that when you have a joint bank account, both parties have equal access
Yes.
to the funds, but creditors also have equal
That's
access to the funds. So if a partner that you're entering a relationship for the first time has creditors, that you might want to know about that in advance of signing a joint bank account, because the creditors will have access to the funds.
Good tip, Jane.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really good,
interesting.
yeah. Great tips all around. So just on a final note, a positive note.
Yes.
Talking about trust and networking and everything else.
Not death.
You know, yeah, right. What else can women do? I know you have an investment club, Mary, here at the
Yes.
Verity. I'd love to see more of those and money groups and to have these discussions and kind of like, gentlemen will get together and talk about maybe stocks and go golfing. I know that's totally stereotypical. A lot of women are doing that too. But generally, as a group, we don't get together and have
Right.
these conversations where another woman can say, wow, that's totally going on in my family. And where do I get that information? And let's empower each other as a gender as opposed to just sharing a referral here or there. What would be your suggestions of what women could do, some simple things?
That's a really good thing.
I think events are a very good idea. You've actually shared some excellent research with me that says women don't look for different things necessarily, but they want to receive the information and be serviced differently. So maybe when you're going after them, you don't have the lunch at the golf club. Maybe you have an event some other time of day where they can network and share that information. Maybe the seminar content is a little different. As you say, it might be more about life issues or financial planning or estate planning, as opposed to it being about the latest stock tips.
Right. I think also when you're talking about large companies, I'll be called in often just to do a health and wellness topic for 100 employees, and this kind of thing would be fabulous. And they'll pay you for this, but this is what we have to be doing, and it's probably being done, but I don't know in companies. I mean, are people asking you or your team someone to come in and?
Great question. Workplace financial literacy is a pretty new thing. The Canadian Chartered Professional Accountants has just launched a workplace financial literacy program, and it's available at lunch and learns all across Canada.
Right.
They have 11,000 volunteer
All-
accountants.
yeah, all free.
Oh,
across
and
Canada.
are they being utilized?
So they are. It's brand new as of November 2015, and
Amazing,
so
it's just all happening
Yeah.
in the last year.
That's Jane's great work.
it's
And
wonderful. But
Amazing.
health and wellness always goes together.
Yeah.
In the workplace,
Yeah.
often people find, and CPA's research shows this, that financial stress is the number one stress in the workplace.
Absolutely.
It translates into absenteeism, less productivity, and so an employer offering a workplace financial literacy program actually shows support, but it also is a win-win for the employee and the employer.
Absolutely, so you've
because-
got to convince them of that, because to me,
That's
it's a
right.
domino effect, right?
It
So
is.
you're stressed, whatever, financially, you stop eating well, you stop exercise, it's all a domino effect, you get
Yes.
sick.
That's
You know, that's how chronic disease steps in.
exactly, it affects everything. So thank you for sharing that resource, and really all of the resources and gems and nuggets and advice that you've given us here today. It'll all be listed on our website. I want to thank all of you for sharing your time and your expertise on how we can empower women to, be competent but also be more confident in stepping up to the financial table. So Joanne Stewart, thank you for joining me. Robyn Graham, Rose Reisman, Cynthia Kett, Jane Rooney, and Mary Aitken. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
And of
Thank
course,
you.
our sponsor, ETF Capital Management.
And thank you.
And thank you very, very much.